And I utterly condemn the violence that we've seen overnight in Ballymena and in other parts of Northern Ireland.
98 people were injured, 31 hotels were damaged or set ablaze. Entire streets were sealed off as tens of thousands moved at once across Northern Ireland. For 3 straight nights, flags did not fly above Belfast, they burned. At 8:34 p.m. on November 5th, the situation in Belfast city centre crossed the point of recovery. Control did not slip, it vanished. Sirens were drowned out by shouting, glass failed in waves. Bricks and bottles moved faster than police lines could form. What began as a protest demanding answers detonated into the most severe breakdown of public order Northern Ireland has faced in a generation. This was not random violence. The targets were chosen. Hotels, specifically government contracted hotels, buildings tied directly to policies people say have drained resources while households fall deeper into crisis. Footage showed riot units locking shields outside one such hotel on the high street. It had housed more than 200 migrants. By nightfall, its windows glowed orange. Fire crews later confirmed 18 suspected arson attacks within 24 hours across Belfast, Derry and Lisbon. Damage spread faster than emergency responses. Through thick smoke, a man shouted toward a camera, "You promised safety, you gave us nothing." Those present did not frame this as hatred, they framed it as abandonment. Across Northern Ireland, police capacity thinned to breaking point. Response times stretched. Officers rotated without rest. An internal briefing warned that regional command was overstretched. Reserves requested, approvals pending. Reinforcements did not arrive. Officers were left holding lines with shrinking numbers and collapsing morale. By midnight, estimated losses surged past £60 million. Hospitals activated contingency protocols. Fuel distribution in several districts dropped by more than 16%. Backup generators engaged. Logistics faltered. Westminster remained silent. At the edge of the chaos, a young nurse named TNR quietly filmed on her phone. "This is my street," she said. "My rent rose nearly 40% this year. They say there's no funding left, but somehow there's always funding for this." Her video exploded online. Millions watched within hours. What they saw was not rage alone, it was exhaustion breaking through. In London, official responses arrived late and thin. Violence was condemned. Unity was urged, dialogue was promised. By morning, more than 130 people had been injured, including over 30 police officers. Overnight sentiment tracking showed public confidence falling sharply. When the Prime Minister finally appeared, his tone was steady, but his words were not. He condemned the violence, he reaffirmed stability, he offered no explanation for the contracts, no acknowledgement of ignored warnings, and no indication of policy change. Questions were shouted. Would the programme be reviewed? Would he visit Belfast? He did not answer. He turned away. Let's be clear. Violence is wrong. Destroying communities solves nothing. But pretending this erupted without cause is equally reckless. Officials insist this was mindless disorder. Many on the ground describe years of pressure building quietly, rising costs, shrinking services, and decisions made far from the streets now absorbing the impact. When people are asked to absorb strain indefinitely, something eventually breaks. As the fires dimmed, another reality surfaced beyond the cameras. Inside streets, strangers helped each other. A migrant woman, shaken after fleeing a burning building, helped an elderly local man lift a fallen shop sign. No slogans, no shouting, just people. In a small church near the city centre, volunteers lit candles for the injured. Residents, migrants and officers alike, each flame small, each equal. A teacher wrote on a scorched wall, "Forgiveness builds what fury burns." The message spread faster than any riot footage. That alone should have unsettled those in power because it showed the public narrative had slipped beyond official control, not because of misinformation, but because lived experience finally collided with denial. What unfolded in Belfast was not merely disorder. It was the release of pressure that had been building for years. Urban fires, now visible and impossible to manage with statements alone. For years, policy decisions have been defended with technocratic language such as capacity, compliance, cost efficiency and emergency necessity, terms designed to sound rational and unavoidable. Yet disconnected from daily life, they do not capture families choosing between rent and heating, or communities watching local services shrink while new obligations arrive fully funded. Repeated calls for patience without visible relief did not calm frustration. They stored it. The system did not fail suddenly. It weakened quietly, then gave way all at once. Warnings were softened, concerns deprioritised, urgency diluted until it no longer disrupted decision-making. The result was a widening gap between how the country is governed and how people actually live. Belfast did not create that gap. It exposed it. The response from the centre followed a familiar pattern: condemnation, reassurance, distance. There was no immediate examination of whether the policies drawing public anger were sustainable in communities already under strain. No acknowledgement that social cohesion cannot be treated as secondary. Instead, the focus remained on restoring order, as if order alone were the issue. But order without consent is fragile. It relies on compliance, not confidence, and once confidence fractures, enforcement becomes harder, not easier. Northern Ireland understands this reality better than most. Stability here has never been automatic. It has required balance, listening, and respect for local conditions. Ignoring that context is not just careless, it is dangerous. What drove this moment was not ideology, it was exhaustion. The images that resonated most were not flames or clashes, but quiet testimonies: a nurse describing her rent, residents describing years of silent pressure. These were not slogans, they were accounts, and accounts are harder to dismiss than accusations. One point must be made clear: violence is wrong. Destroying one's own community solves nothing and deepens harm for everyone involved. Examining causes is not an excuse for violence, it is the only way to prevent its repetition. Ignoring causes guarantees the cycle continues. Even amid the chaos, moments emerged that resisted a narrative of total collapse. Strangers helped one another. Candles were lit. A small church became shared ground for residents, migrants, and officers alike. These moments showed that social cohesion has not vanished. It has been left unsupported. Communities are compensating where systems have stalled, and that is not sustainable. If this episode is treated as a standalone public order problem, the lesson will be missed. The core issue is trust. Trust in institutions that claim to manage risk while steadily transferring it downward. Trust in leadership that speaks of unity without addressing imbalance. Trust in a system that promises stability while asking those least able to absorb pressure to absorb the most. The danger now is not immediate escalation, it is repetition. Similar pressures exist elsewhere. Different streets, the same pattern. Rising living costs, limited housing, centralised decisions, local consequences. Belfast did not collapse because it is uniquely volatile. It reached the limit first. The fires will fade from headlines. Streets will be cleaned. Language will soften. But unless the underlying contradictions are confronted honestly, the next rupture will arrive quietly, then suddenly somewhere else, and each time it happens, restoring trust becomes harder. This moment demands more than condemnation. It demands accountability, adjustment, and real change, not to excuse violence, but to end the conditions that reproduce it. Stability cannot be imposed indefinitely. It must be built, maintained, and renewed. Belfast forced the country to pay attention. The remaining question is whether those in power will respond or turn away again. If you want deeper analysis of the system, the policies behind it, and what may come next, subscribe to the channel and watch our upcoming breakdowns. This story is not over.